Peter Drucker famously quipped that culture eats strategy for breakfast. One can go further and say, well, what is this culture thing about? And in fact, the essence of the issue of culture really has to do with the intent of the individual. Fundamentally, successful cultures are basically the product of the average person in the organization or in the group being there to give, and unsuccessful cultures are concerned or made up of people who are there to get. And we have a very simple metaphor to try and explain this, and we call it the three baker analogy. Let's assume you've got three bakers who collaborate to bake a cake. It takes them a whole month to bake the cake, and at the end of the month, the cake is sold. Once the cake is sold, assume each baker takes a slice home to feed their family, and then there's a slice left. You would call that slice that's left either a surplus or a profit. And the slice that's left, that surplus, if you like, is the measure of the success of the enterprise. The bigger that slice is vis-a-vis the rest of the cake, the more successful the enterprise can be deemed to be. Now, that slice surely only exists because the total cake that was baked was bigger than what each individual took home. In other words, the question here is, collectively, have these people given more than what they've taken, or have they taken more than what they've given? And clearly, they've given more than what they've taken. And this suggests, therefore, that the success of an enterprise, its capacity to produce a surplus, is the product of the intent of the individual in the enterprise to be here to make a contribution, to give more than what they're taking. Now, this intent to give among people, in the first instance, gets expressed in how people in teams in the organization deal with each other. If you consider any successful sporting team, for instance, like a soccer team, surely most of the work that happens on the field is not about somebody scoring. Most of the work is concerned with somebody trying to set somebody else up to score. Now, if you consider this intent of a player who's there to set their colleague up to score, their teammate up to score, what they're actually saying to their teammate is that, listen, I'm quite happy for you to be the star. I don't have to be the star. So when you have this in a team, when you have this magnanimity of spirit in the individual player, of being there, being willing to make their colleagues the star, that's when you have a team. Clearly, when every member of the team is there to be the star themselves, you don't have a team, you've got a herd of cats. Now, the question that is invoked by this is, well, what are the conditions under which people will be there to set their colleagues up to succeed? And as far as I'm concerned, I think the most important variable that actually accounts for that is how the group is led. People go the extra mile for people. So if you really want to understand the conditions under which people will be there to set their colleagues up to succeed, don't ask yourself what's the organization these people are working for, but actually who's the boss, And when you examine this issue, you actually hit a very serious problem in most organizations, because if you ask people who have leadership roles or management roles in organizations, in other words, they inhabit a place in the hierarchy, if you ask them to describe what they understand by their role, you actually find a really toxic assumption. Because if you say, for instance, to an average manager, describe what the word leadership means. What's the job of a leader? What do leaders do? They will give you a whole bag of words, but that bag of words will have two elements to it. First of all, there'll be a set of themes that will be concerned with people. So leadership is about caring for people, listening to people, being approachable, coaching people, etc., etc. But then there'll be a second set of words which will be about an outcome of some kind, about achieving a vision or achieving a goal or achieving some sort of objective or a result. So when most leaders look at their role as leaders, what they understand their role to be is to achieve a result through people. Now, that view is deeply toxic, because if I'm your boss and I said to you, I'm here to achieve a result through you, ask yourself, am I there to get something from you, or am I there to give something to you? And clearly I'm there to get something from you, which kind of suggests that people aren't going to go the extra mile for takers. So people aren't going to give to takers. So if the leader wants to crack the code of how they should understand their role, they should invert the logic of the statement. They should take a statement that says something like leadership is about achieving a result through people, and they should say something like leadership is about achieving people through results. Now, initially that might sound quite nutty, but that's exactly what leaders do. I mean, that's exactly what coaches do. A coach's job is not to achieve a result. That's what players do. So what is the coach's job? The coach's job is to coach the player. Now, in order to coach the player, the coach has got to understand what's happening on the field. In other words, they have to understand the job, the game that's being played, and they have to understand what's on the scoreboard. But those two things aren't the coach's job. Those two things give the coach the information that he or she requires to do their job, which is to coach the player. In other words, the coach uses the game and the result as their means to coach the player. The coach literally produces the player through the results. Now, when you've got this flip articulated, when the average leader in an organization understands that their deliverable to the organization is the excellence of the people reporting to them, and that, if you like, the organization is kind of like a gymnasium to help them to cultivate extraordinary people, from that point forward, that organization will take off.